Good afternoon to everyone out there in Facebook world, in YouTube world, and everything else. And I want to welcome you to today's episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network, the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. And today, just like every day, we've got a great guest lined up. And it's going to be something that I think could alter your thinking about the way you do business. Because, like I said, when I set the intros up for this, think for a minute. You're heading out the door. It's another day at work. It's a great day. The sun's shining, everything's good. And then all of a sudden, you fall and you fall hard. And just like I put in the title, gravity always wins. But luckily, this gentleman survived this fall because, to be honest with you, from the distance he fell, there are fatalities from this. So he's extremely lucky. So I asked him to do a presentation with us today to tell you what it's like and the aftermath of this and what it's been like to reconstruct his business and his life in this. So, Brandy, what's your thoughts on the value of today's episode? And from your aspect, you've got a medical background, so you know what could have well happened and the internal injuries and everything else, right?
Well, this is my worst fear. I say all the time when we're having a bad day here, hey, at least nobody fell off a roof. And I've asked all my technicians to take time to tune in today or this evening if they can watch the rebroadcast of it because I think it's so important.
Yes, it truly is. And that's why I wanted to get this episode up and get it broadcast out. So, Cheryl, what's your thought about today's episode?
Main thing I've got to add in here is you don't realize how fast your life can change. It doesn't take days, it can happen in moments, just as Dion's has changed. So, any of us are susceptible to this, maybe not from where he came, but from other things. So, if this is not a field that you work in and you're watching, just put it into your business and the things that may cause problems there.
Right. But at the same token, we have a very close friend that was a coach of ours who took a very distinct fall in his own home painting and broke his back and has gone through tremendous pain in getting himself back together. So our guest today, his name is Dion Martorella, and he comes to us from Knoxville, Tennessee, and he's going to share with us the story of how gravity wins and the way you change your life when this happens. So stick around. We'll be right back and we'll have Dion on camera and we're going to start our podcast, our broadcast in just a minute. And welcome back. And Dion, first of all, I want to thank you. I know you're a busy guy and all that kind of stuff, but appreciate you being with us today and being willing to share the Dion story. Because the whole thing is, I think in listening to this, you may save a life today. You may prevent someone else from having injury. I've had friends that have lost their employees due to fatalities. Recently, a couple months ago, we actually interviewed Clay Lamb, who had lost an employee who was electrocuted on a job site. And we learned through that. I had no idea that electricity could travel through fog, which was why that fatality happened and the things that went on. So let's start out today, Dion. Let's talk a little bit about Dion. Tell us where you came from and how you got to Knoxville, Tennessee, and a little bit about your business today, Dion.
Sure. So, I originally got started upstate New York. I owned a chimney company in the Hudson Valley market called Hudson River Chimney, and my fiance's whole family sort of moved down to Tennessee over time. And we were kind of looking to get out of New York to begin with. We weren't really happy with the taxes and a lot of regulations on our business, and it was a very, very competitive market. And so with her family kind of moving down here. I think I finally heard it was no state income tax for me. It was the last straw. And I was like, well, we're moving to Tennessee in 8 months. And she said, okay. And yeah, we've been here now since July of 2019. And it's been a fun run. We love it here.
That's it. So no income tax versus heavily taxed New York. That was a big drawing card for you.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I had just had a big tax bill that I had to hand over to New York State right before hearing that, and that was just, I think I'd already been considering it, but that was the icing on the cake. It was like, it's
Yeah.
all you got to tell me.
Yeah. And for people that don't know anything about Knoxville, that's in the eastern part of Tennessee. It's located, Interstate 40 goes right through the middle of it, east and west. And you got I-75 going north and south straight through there. So many times I'm going through Knoxville when I'm heading out on my road trips and all that. Knoxville's a town I go through a lot of heavy traffic, that kind of stuff. I-40 can be a real pain in the rear end sometimes. It's like if you hit I-40 at rush hour, it can be a real problem into there. I've come out of Kentucky coming down through there where you actually bypass a lot of that. But it's a pretty good ride through there. So, Brandy, what would be the first question that you would direct at Dion today from your aspect?
Yeah, I guess if you could just take us back to that day, I assume you woke up that morning, had your normal morning routine. Could you just take us back to that day?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a pretty normal day, you could say. I mean, I typically don't work by myself, but I'd had some recruiting issues and just kind of been working by myself for a while. And I told myself that I was just going to take easy jobs that I could do by myself, no problem, until I got some new hires in. And that kind of turned into, oh well, I could do this one, I could do this one. I'm Dion. I've been doing this so long. I'm a monkey on the roof. You can't stop me. And yeah, that day I came out. I mixed up some mortar. I set up the ladder. It was one of those gutters. A lot of guys tuning in might be familiar. Kind of have a real kind of rounded out kind of built-in gutter guard. If anyone's familiar with what I'm talking about. And ladders always seem to want to kind of slide away from them. And I had the ladder set up. I thought I had it set up real good. And I think once I started going up with that bucket of mortar, just that extra weight, I made it about halfway up the ladder and it started sliding. And yeah, once I seen it go away from the roof, I knew like that was it. I was going down. And it's crazy. I've talked to other people who've been in similar situations, and they say it's crazy, how much you can almost explain went through your head in such a short amount of time, because it almost doesn't even make sense, and I remember just thinking, like that at this point I'm going down. There was kind of a drop off if I tried to jump away from the ladder, the way they kind of built the house up off of a lake it was sitting on. So they kind of had it elevated. So it was a big drop down if I would have tried to kind of jump off the ladder and land. So I just kind of held onto the ladder real tight and told myself, like, don't land on your back or hit your head. And that was like my main focus on the way down. And I hit my right side really hard. I mean, the whole right side of my body was pretty much black. And yeah, the neighbor ran over. The homeowner came out shortly after. I'm not sure that they even heard the ladder fall or if they went to get him. I mean, at this point, I was just kind of, next thing you know, I was rolling around on the ground. I couldn't sit myself up. I couldn't breathe real good. The one guy, I think, said he was an EMT or had some kind of medical experience and was telling me, he thought my ribs were cracked because I couldn't breathe. And they called the ambulance. The ambulance came out. They were actually trying to put me on a helicopter because, of course, though, I was working way outside of our usual service area. I was about an hour outside of Knoxville, an hour and a half. And yeah, so they were trying to fly me to the UT Medical University, but I guess the helicopter wasn't flying that day. And they, they came out maybe an hour later. It took for the ambulance to get there, and the whole time the customers had kind of got me propped up into a chair, and I was just really focused on trying to breathe. I mean, after a while, I wouldn't even talk to them. They'd ask me questions, and I was just having a really, really hard time breathing. And the adrenaline kind of started to wear out. And next thing you know, I mean, I was in excruciating pain, and it kind of it was scary. It all started kind of setting in, and the EMTs finally came there. They were concerned, with I guess the pain I was describing. They didn't want me to move much, and they strapped me to like a board and kind of sat me back, and then they carried me up into the ambulance, took me over to the hospital. I remember it really, really kind of sinking in the ambulance, because just them moving me had really made the pain like probably 20 times worse. And they got me into the ambulance. They hooked me up to some fentanyl and stuff, and that kind of brought the pain down. And then it was almost like at that point, the mental started hitting me more, all kinds of stuff going through my head. Now that I could think more, like, I was really scared I was going to die. I mean, some of the questions the EMT were asking me. I mean, there was one point, I swear he was looking at me like he thought I was going to die on him. And they were talking how they might have to stab me because I had a collapsed lung, it turned out, and they might have had to stab me right there in the ambulance or something. And yeah, so it was surreal. It was intense.
Do you think if the neighbor hadn't have been there, would you have been able to reach your phone, or did you have your phone on you? Would you have been able to call for help if you?
I was actually on the phone with my fiance. I had her in my earpiece. I work a lot in the field with a little earpiece in and stuff in case I get a call on the job. And she was actually on the phone with me through all of this. So.
And so then it sounds like when you got to the hospital, it sounds like they must have had to have put in a chest tube. It sounds like.
Yes. Yeah. Oh. So I had a 40% collapsed lung, and they numbed up my chest. But the worst part was they were really concerned, about that. So it was like an emergency. I guess they brought in like the doctor and to get the chest tube in, but they were pulling my arm back as they were putting the chest tube in. And that was really, I also had 3 fractured ribs, and my T something is like a part of my back, the T12 that pushes up against my spine or something. And when they were pulling my arm all the way back, it seemed to really like put pressure on that. And I was screaming at the top of my lungs, strapped to this board, staring straight up with a neck brace on in the hospital.
Oh my goodness.
So for anybody who thinks they're invincible, I mean, I thought so too. It was.
Did they give you a pain pump? Did you have like a pain pump where you could push a button and give yourself pain medication?
No, they didn't do that. I had an IV in like each arm for like a week, and they were constantly, pumping drugs into me and morphine and all kinds of stuff like that.
All right, sure. I have more questions, but I'll let you go.
Well, I got one on that also before you go, Cheryl. What did your fiance hear? I mean, it's really interesting. She was actually listening as you were falling. What did she say? Did she say you said anything?
I don't think I can answer that because you made me promise I wouldn't swear. So I'll let you use your imagination. It was a lot of swearing.
I mean, that had to be something else.
I don't think I've ever sworn in front of a customer so much. I could tell you that much when they came out. I mean, it was a lot of swearing after the initial fall.
And I can only imagine what she was thinking. You were falling and she's sitting in her home or whatever and doesn't have any idea what is happening. That had to be true agony for her. Yeah.
It was, I think at some point too, I didn't even realize like my earpiece had fallen out, and she was just kind of guessing. The customer ended up asking like, if there was anyone she should call, and she kind of took it from there, was communicating with her, because I was just at this point just in a lot of pain and couldn't move. So yeah, the customer communicated with her, which hospital I was going to and when the ambulance was getting there, and she drove straight out to the hospital and met me there.
Yeah, and that's not an easy thing. So Cheryl, what question would you ask Dion about this episode?
Well, I'm going to take it afterwards. So you've got a young child, I understand, and your fiance, you've got a business you're trying to run. I know you have to think about it. What all have you had to change to make your family life, your child's life, and your business? What nuances are different?
Well, I pretty much had to definitely find a way out of the field immediately, which I mean, fortunately, I was able to hire someone. I did a phone screening like my second day in the hospital, like in the hospital bed. And then I interviewed this poor guy, like in my living room, like stuck in the recliner. But I was able to hire some people to kind of keep, the money flowing in while I'm hurt. Because obviously when you're in a situation like I was at that point and you are your only employee, if you stop, the whole thing falls apart. So, I mean, that's something like, especially for, owner operators out there to think about. I mean, I up until I hired some people, like the big thing going through my head, even more than my own pain, was, how am I going to feed my son? How am I going to pay the bills? Because the bills keep coming in,
Got you.
So,
So go ahead, Carol.
so what would you advise a single man operation? I mean, can you give him some foresight into what the world looks like in your seat?
I mean, if you're not interested in growing, I know there's a lot of people who prefer to be owner operator. I was more in a understaffed situation. That's never really been my angle. But I mean, if you're one of those people who enjoys just running the show by yourself, I mean, I would just recommend you have a big nest egg. I mean, that's really all you can do, because the reality is that if you're owner operator, it does all fall apart without you. So I mean, have, money in the bank, have life insurance for your family, God forbid you don't survive. Because, I mean, as Jerry mentioned earlier, I fell from about 15 feet and guys die from 8 all the time.
Yeah. So Dion, one of the things, and we saw this, you're in an industry that, hey, people may argue, people may not agree, but at the same time, if somebody goes down like you did, it's amazing how this industry comes together. And that's what happened here. And people that actually, many of us contributed to a fund to help you through this. Some of these people, I would say, you don't even know, have never met.
So
And
there's people I can tell you for certain that donated to that fund that I've personally never gotten along with. That, like, I scrolled down and was surprised at some of the donations I saw.
yeah,
I mean, that was, and I'll tell you what, I mean, peace of mind. I mean, while I was working on trying to find some employees and figure out what I was going to do, just all the people who reached out and offered to set up that GoFundMe for me, and all the people who donated. I mean, I'm forever grateful. I mean, it was really, really humbling, honestly. And we're in a beautiful industry to say that it's not the first time this has happened. This isn't, everybody just loves Dion Martorella or something. Because I mean, I've seen this time and time again in our industry that
yeah, you weren't the
people
exception.
together.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
truly,
Oh, I know. Trust me. Yeah,
yeah,
there was a gentleman. I want to say about a year ago who, he wasn't even on Facebook. Someone came in, was like, "Hey, this is like a chimney guy in my market, and this is what he's going through. This is, I believe it was the floods out in Nashville, and it was the same thing. It's just a great industry that we're in."
yeah. So since this has happened, Dion, and if you look back to that day, what would you have done different that could have prevented this? I well remember a time back 40 years ago almost, and I fell off of a ladder going from one floor to another floor and I had a handful of rods. And I threw those chimney rods out of the way because, hey, you're going down. Gravity is winning. You're picking up speed. You don't have a lot of time to react. But my thought was, Lord, if I land on one of these rods, this could be the end. So that I threw it and then I landed. And luckily, it was probably a 10-foot fall. But yeah, was it a little bit? But still, to this day, I have back issues from that point forward, and actually put me on a cane at times. So as you look back at this to that day, what would you have done different knowing what you know today?
I would have not taken that job, because it was just frankly not a job anyone should have been doing by themselves. And I think sometimes as business owners, whether it's you telling yourself you can do it by yourself, or you trying to push a guy to do it by himself because someone called out, and maybe you're behind, I mean, it's not worth it. Reschedule the job, or in my case, if this logistically you can't get help, just don't take the job. I mean, I think that's the only, I think it was like apparent. I knew. I mean, I was having issues on that job. I was uncomfortable on that job, the way the ladder setup was, and whatnot. And I should have just not tried to do it by myself. I should have, if anything, showed up there that day, told the customer I couldn't get any help to do it, and given him his deposit back, and moved on.
Yeah. And that's one of the things. Right now, I'm teaching a basic chimney sweeping class, and I'm on lunch while we're doing this interview today. Just stopped it off in order to get onto this. So, anyway, I just had a slide this morning and went over safety. That was my first subject matter in today's class. And one of the first slides that I always play is that no job is so critical No job is so important that it compromises your ability to have dinner tonight with your loved ones. Okay. And we try to reinforce that. And to be honest with you, that's what's so great about this, because the story you're sharing right now, hey, I've known you for years, Dion. Okay. And you probably had the forethought, like many does. It's never going to happen to me. It's always going to happen to somebody else. It's not, I'm not going to be the victim here. But as you're going down and gravity is winning, and you're picking up this velocity going down and preparing, how do I feel? What's it going to feel like when I hit? And then the aftermath, it kind of changes your whole outlook on life a lot of times. So, Brandy, what would be the next question you would ask Dion here today?
So, as a single owner operator, did you have health insurance?
No.
Okay. Talk to me after the show, because I have a few tips about how to negotiate those hospital bills.
I'm setting it up now because I'm adding benefits for all my guys. So I'm going to set up like a plan for myself too, moving forward. But yeah, I mean, I fell no health insurance, no life insurance. I've been working by myself for 6 months. I canceled my work comp policy, everything. So.
Okay. And then Jerry brought up like his long-term repercussions, like with his back. What are they telling you? Are they telling you may have any long-term repercussions?
They're telling me I should make a full recovery. I don't, it's just going to take time, I guess. I'm about at like the mark where I should be full recovery. And I'll say like, even right now, I'm kind of getting stiff just sitting in this chair. My back is definitely something I'm going to make a prediction and say, I think I'm always going to have back problems. It's not what they told me, but it's been bad since, honestly. Right when I thought I was like totally fine, and just started bothering me again. So,
okay. So, Brandy, let me ask you a question. As you've heard this, and you've heard him say what he was going through, and how close was he to actually not being here today, in your opinion?
Well, I was just worried. I just kind of freaked out when he said that they had him sitting up, because I was like, why did they move you?
Yeah, a few people have said that they shouldn't have moved me. And it makes sense when the EMTs got there, they like carefully leaned me back into like a board and strapped to it and put a neck brace on me. Like they didn't want, for like the first 48 hours, I was pretty much staring straight ahead. So like when I was laid down in a bed, I was just looking at the ceiling.
Yeah, that's just scary because, if you would have had a spinal injury in a different place, they could have paralyzed you. So I'm just grateful that didn't happen.
Right. But overall, you've heard about the collapsed lung. You've heard about the worries they had. You, in your medical training, is he lucky to be here today?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, like you said, people die falling from 8 feet, and he was like 15 feet.
Right. Even during the end, like you just said, even moving someone. I hope everybody heard that, what Brandy just said. Brandy, would you repeat that about when someone does fall and trying to move them and how it could paralyze you? Can you speak to that?
Yes, do not move them. Wait until the paramedics get there and they can get a neck brace on and then get a backboard. Never move, and don't try to move yourself either. Like, don't try to sit up yourself. And especially with that collapsed lung, you're probably filling up with blood. There was a whole lot going on there.
That's what I mean. So if you had been in the trauma room, in the emergency room, this would have been a life or death case whenever he was pulled in the ambulance. Would y'all have been looking at it in that way?
Well, he certainly wouldn't have sat out in the waiting room. I can tell you that.
Okay. So he wouldn't have had to wait on medical care. He would have come right in. Okay. Yep. That's it. So Cheryl,
the collapsed lung, I think, was a big thing with them. I was like a learning experience for me, but I'll tell you, like, I even after being hooked up to the oxygen, I was still just, I would say I spent 48 hours, like you said, woke up, normal day, just planning to go to work. And instead of having family with my, a dinner with my family, I spent the next 48 hours literally just trying to focus on breathing. I was just so scared I was going to stop breathing.
If I had to guess, if the helicopter was flying that day, they probably would have put the chest tube in the helicopter.
Yeah, they almost did in the ambulance. As the guy was telling me, I'm just letting you know, like, I might have to like stab you in the chest and put this tube in. So
ain't nothing like telling a boy from Queens, New York, we might have to just stab your butt out here in this ambulance. I'm sure, hey, wait, and you're growing up, that's probably not a good term to use for somebody from Queens, New York, I'm guessing.
No, it usually leads to you trying to grab my wallet.
So, Cheryl, what would be your next question for our friend Dion?
So, Dion, at this point, do you think you'll ever return to the field as a labor person or instead of just an oversight person?
I think my roof days are over. I don't know. I mean, I like I said, I mean, I've really been trying to get myself out of the field for a long time anyway. But I mean, apart from that, I don't know. I'm scared. I like a lot of older people told me I'm 27 years old. I mean, I might have not survived that fall had I been a little older. So I'm kind of scared I don't have another fall in me at this point. So I think ideally my guys are going to take it from here.
Okay. So, so undoubtedly, a service technician is not like a cat. We don't have 9 lives.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement.
Okay, so let me ask you the next question. After this has happened, and now you've got people in the field that are working under you, what have you implemented in your company that none of them repeats what you did?
In terms of safety,
Yes.
harnesses. I ordered those climbing hats, those Pexel hats. I'm getting one of those goat things. I'm considering the Ridge Pro. So I mean, I guess I can't exactly tell you exactly what I've done yet, but what I can tell you in the past 6 weeks, we've started working on that. Trying to avoid, I had 2 people to a job, never one person to a job. That's for sure. And we want to try to develop, more of like a safety training system and more, safety programs that we can implement to make sure that never happens to any of our employees.
And that's the amazing thing, and that's the story that often happens. Whenever I look at the two guys in our industry that are probably on the forefront of safety, the two names that come to my mind are Jim Brewer and Bob Ferrari. And each of these actually launched that interest in safety after bad things had happened. With Jim, it happened to one of his employees. And I can still remember the day this happened. And I remember Jim telling me, Jerry, I never had any idea that someone could fall off of a ladder going up a 1-story roof and be killed. Never had a thought that this would happen until it happened. And what that's done, that's driven Jim to do what he does today, which he retired, sold his business, and now sells safety equipment and does training. And the same thing with Bob Ferrari. Bob Ferrari had an accident and it brought very true to him. And I can also remember Brian Barnhill and talking one time and what had happened to him and about the fall and how this, they're into head injuries. And that's a lot of what goes on. And luckily, you came out of this, you didn't have a head injury. If I look at the racing industry right now, there's a race car driver that had a concussion back in June, and he is still not driving a race car to this day because of what happens. And many athletes go through this where they have concussions and they have to retire from the sports and do all that. So that's how they did it. And again, that was my purpose in this broadcast today, that from people listening to you, and it was kind of funny. The other week, so everybody know, we actually talked at the Chimney Expo, and it was about the broadcast. And I said something then. I said, so could we possibly title this Young and Dumb from what you've learned from this? And I mean, and I'm serious because you said the key thing. It matures you. What were the fears like during this recovery about your family, about the bills, about business going on? What were you losing sleep at night? Was it like an emotional turmoil of what will I do next?
I just kind of got in this mode, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's got something I do. I mean, I come from a really crazy background, and I've been through a lot of adversity in my life, and I think when the going gets tough, I get in this mode, and all I did, I'm still like that. I've just, since the moment I fell, I've just been hyper focused on just number one, trying to make sure, we continue to, allow the business to run without me. And number two, like you said, I mean, all those thoughts you have going through your head, the bills, how am I going to feed my family? I had to really, come up with a whole new game plan. And that's just something I've just been after nonstop since I fell. It's a scary thing. I mean, like I said, first I was just trying to focus on living and surviving. And then, once I made it through that, it was like, well, how do I, financially survive, and that's just been my primary focus since is, how do I turn this business into a well-oiled machine? So, if I'm not here, next week, I can leave it to my family and they can continue to eat, without me.
So part of that is you come to a realization that it was time to build a legacy, something that would survive beyond you, something that your fiance, your son could have going forward. Would that be a correct statement to make about this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it really forced me to grow. I mean, like, it's not that we weren't trying to grow before, but this gave me that, like, there's no option. And it's almost cliche, but you'll hear some of those, like, kind of motivational speaker guys around us, say something along the lines of, act like you had no choice. If you had 30 days to build $1 million business or you were going to die, I bet you'd find a way to do it. And I think that's the best way, to kind of best kind of analogy to give there is just, it put me in a situation where I can't not hire someone. I can't not find the right recruit. That application has to be good enough. That candidate has to be good enough. I have to find a way to mold them, to build them, to reach them. That phone has to ring. We have to get out there. We have to get that job done. And we have to figure out how to do it with me. I mean, for the first few weeks I was home, literally almost just in the recliner the whole time. So, it really, really, pushed the envelope and put me in a position where I had no choice. And, I don't know if anybody can take anything out of this from listening to this, apart from, the obvious, safety aspect of it is, if you're in a situation now where you are exposed, act like you have no choice but to get out of that situation. Act like you're already me. You fell and there's nothing you can do, and you have to build that business. So that's my 2 cents.
Got you covered. So, Brandy, we're going to be finishing up for long. You got another question? Anything you would like to address with Dion?
Well, I was wondering, because I know in Jim Brewer's case with his employee, we know OSHA got involved. Did OSHA have to get involved in this, or were you able to keep them out of it?
Haven't heard from them. Hopefully I don't.
Good.
Okay. Cheryl, what about you? You got a final one?
Well, just a statement mainly. We've heard the movie Dumb and Dumber. So is it young and dumb and old and dumber? Because I still see a lot of older people getting on roofs. I have seen one quit recently, but I'm seeing a lot of they're still on the roof, and they're not going to come out of this as clean as you did.
Nope.
Yeah, I had a couple conversations up at the Chimney Expo with some of the older folks, and I mean, that was usually at some point they'd say that to me in the conversation, like, I wouldn't be here. And it's hard to disagree with that. I mean, if I'm 27 and you're, 47, 57, 67, and you're still getting on roofs, and I know quite a few guys, I mean, yeah, I mean, you probably wouldn't have survived the fall. I mean, that's just, a reality there.
Well, Dion, what I'm hearing is that this fall lit a fuse in you. This fall opened your eyes up to a lot of things. Number one, how frail we are as human beings. Also opened you up that gravity will win. Okay. You're not going to beat gravity. When you're going down, you're going down.
Yeah.
But what it's also done is, I think it has lit a fuse in Dion to where Dion is looking at life. Dion is looking at business. Dion is looking at things from a totally different perspective. I take it that Dion is happy to be alive. I take it that Dion is looking forward to the future, and Dion is ready to face those challenges. Do I read you correctly, my friend?
You do. It's definitely made me a much more present person, much more gracious person. I mean, I'm just, I still feel, I feel every day still to this day, like I shouldn't be here, and I have to believe. I mean, if you're a spiritual person at all, I have to believe I'm here for a reason, and I intend to, fulfill that reason, whatever it is.
Amen. Well, that's great. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking your time out of a day. You spend a lot of time getting things going, building this new legacy up, changing your company around, new processes. It's also good to know you're reinforcing things, you're ordering safety equipment in. You don't want this to happen to one of your employees because, to be honest with you, if it happens to an employee, it's just as heart-wrenching, probably. Maybe it's not as painful personally, but
Right.
at the same time, it's very heart wrenching. So,
Yeah.
and so you folks know, if you're listening in, I want to show you the cover for our new book we're coming out with, which is called Safety for the Service Technician. It's a book that myself and Robbie Murphy have been working on for about 6 months, and we're going to be releasing hopefully in the next couple of weeks. So that's part of why we're seeing this. For years, I didn't take safety seriously. It's one of those things. It's just out there until bad things happen. But at this point, I've seen too many bad things happen. I've seen people that their employees have been injured. I've seen people have amputations. I've seen death. And luckily, we're not having to go to a funeral, Dion. With you, you're going to come back. I'll be honest with you. I don't know about Brandy and Cheryl, but I was pretty shocked to see your butt walking around at Chimney Expo. When I saw you walking in front of me, and I said, "Hey, is that Dion?" I said, "Yeah." What in the world? I didn't expect to see him here. So again,
I'm a stubborn Sicilian. You can't keep me down for long.
I hear you, brother. So again, I want to thank you for joining us today, sharing what you did, because I think honestly, you may have saved a life or prevented some injuries. And Brandy's shaking her head, yeah, because her young guys, maybe they'll listen to this, maybe they'll get it. Maybe they think that Brandy's just talking out of her ears sometimes and doesn't know what she's talking about, but it's the truth. So appreciate you being here. And this has been the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network. It's sponsored by the CBC Success Group, and every week we're on and we try to bring you subject matter experts and great guests just like Dion to help you design and build the business of your dreams. So please join us every week. And with that, we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Chimney and Fireplace Success Network.
Thanks for having me.